Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to the penultimate video filled with my post-season ramblings, and today I'm going to give my thoughts on Red Bull's 2020. It was a bit of an odd year for Red Bull. They were quick and moved up one place in the Constructors compared to 2019, although they were worse off in terms of points. Then again, it was a shorter season, so I'll not read too much into that. But they were very much on their own in terms of pace, with no real consistent threat from behind, and not really enough pace to challenge Mercedes for the titles. Then again, how many times over the last couple of years has Red Bull been stuck in that sort of no man's land gap between the champions and the rest? They've had a good season, don't get me wrong, but there is no doubt they would have been hoping for more than 2 wins following pre-season. I have to say though, they did drop a fair few points due to reliability issues. Okay, not enough to suddenly see them as title contenders, but I count 4 in total, 2 for Verstappen and 2 for Albon. And when you factor in the puncture for the Dutchman at Imola, as well as being wiped out at Mugello following other issues which saw him falling through the field, and then the incident at Sakir on top of that, they could have been much closer to Mercedes. Again, it was a good season. I just personally expected more. Maybe not a title or a title challenge, but certainly to give Mercedes something to think about. Max Verstappen was very, very good again this year and was the only driver to challenge the champions at all. And just on those reliability issues and retirements, he could have even beaten Bottas in the standings if he'd been able to pick up the points he was likely on for in those races. In the end, finishing the year just 9 points behind the Finn. He also picked up as many wins as Bottas this year despite the apparent dominance of the Mercedes, and just as many podiums as well, with both drivers grabbing 11. The more you look back at his season, the more you realise just how good the Dutchman was in 2020. Now, I was, for the want of a better phrase, pulled up on this by Timo in the comments in the Abu Dhabi reaction stream, basically asking why I hadn't mentioned Verstappen as a contender for driver of the season. And the truth is, until I really sat down to look at his year as a whole for this video, I didn't actually realise just how much he'd done. After all, this year has come thick and fast. I personally felt like 2019 had been a more impressive year for him, and because like the team he was sort of caught in that no man's land situation by his own admission at times, it wasn't always obvious how well he was performing. But again, on reflection, he does deserve to be thrown into that debate. I wouldn't say that he is the overall driver of the year, but he was the only one to get anywhere near Mercedes in 2020. He scored at every single race he finished, only failing to make it to the podium once, and was more of a threat to Bottas, quite frankly, than the Finn was to Hamilton. If Red Bull can get that car right next year and the reliability issues are ironed out, he could very well be looking at P2 in the standings and maybe, just maybe, a shot at the title. That could be a bit of a big ask though, given that Mercedes will likely be favourites, but overall, a far more impressive season for Max than I had realised or even given him full credit for. He also absolutely destroyed his teammate in 2020, no argument there. Alex Albon was beaten 17-0 in qualifying, 12-4 overall in the races, 11-0 if we factor in DNFs. Albon's average qualifying was 7.1 versus Verstappen's 3.1, and if you think it's unfair to compare him to Max, Perez's average was 7.0 and Ricciardo was only 0.6 off with an average of 7.7. And come the end of the season, he was a hefty 109 points behind the Dutchman and ended the year 7th in the championship. It wasn't even remotely close. It's difficult to sum up Albon's season because we all know that car is geared towards Verstappen, which is absolutely what you'd expect given that he is the team leader. And so it is always going to be an uphill fight for whoever sits in that seat. Most drivers would be at a disadvantage versus Max in that car, so I'm not saying things will be astronomically different for another driver. However, as much as I'm sure people will be quick to wheel out the excuses, that car is better than P7 in the standings and 105 points. It's a shame really, because I thought Albon would have a good year because, for me anyway, he did a really solid job in the final 9 races of 2019, especially when you consider it was his first season in F1 and he was thrown in at the deep end mid-season with Red Bull. And there were some positives for him in 2020. He made it to the podium twice, which in all honesty is perhaps to be expected given that P4 is where he should have been most weekends in that car. So even if he had an amazing year in, let's say, a normal season, he might still only come away with 2 or 3 podiums given that Mercedes and Verstappen would likely lock out the top 3 at most races. But that does mean the second Red Bull driver needs to be P4. It does need to be said though that he also looked like a contender for the wins in Austria and Turkey before things fell apart. So not every single bit of the season was bad. But all in all, not good enough for me, and based on pure performance, I think swapping him out for Perez is the right way to go. I do feel for Albon, because it can't be easy being Verstappen's teammate and being constantly compared to him. But when you consider the criticism levelled at Gasly's performances in 2019, it's only right that Alex is held to the same standard. And given that there was no competition for Red Bull this year because, well, frankly, the Ferrari was terrible, He should have done a far better job, and for the millionth time in 2020, he should have been finishing in that top 5, probably 4th, far more consistently than he was. The job of a number 2 driver is to offer backup to the team leader and give the team options with strategy, as well as pick up the pieces if the number 1 driver has issues. That's what they were lacking for much of this season. I really hope he returns full-time one day, I genuinely do. And maybe a year out of the spotlight will take the pressure off him and he can use that time to develop and maybe come back stronger in the future. Look, he's a lovely lad, there is no doubt about that, but drivers have got to be judged on what they do on track. Anyway, to summarise super quickly, I expected more from Red Bull overall, but it was always going to be tough going up against a dominant Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton on top form. But Max Verstappen did just about all he could and had a really strong season, and had he had the consistent support of a teammate, he and the team could have achieved even more. That is it for this one though, but you can, as always, let me know your thoughts on Red Bull's season down in the comments section, but also how would you rate their season out of 10? Now, I will be back one more time in 2020 with the final post-season waffle going out soon, but in the meantime, don't forget that you can of course follow me over on social media, and all of the links you need for that are in the description down below. But as ever, thank you for watching, I've been Sean, this has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.